Sometimes a single tragic event can pull back the curtain on a much, much bigger crisis. And that's exactly what's happened in South Sudan. We're going to break down a horrific attack that's really a warning sign for the world's youngest nation and look at why this matters so, so much right now.
169. Let's just start with that number. That's how many people, at a minimum, were killed in a single absolutely brutal attack on Sunday, March 1st. And this number, it's the tip of the iceberg in a story of spiraling violence in South Sudan.
So, to really get a handle on what's going on, we have to zoom in on the specifics of this massacre. It all went down in Abiemnom County, a pretty remote area in the northern part of the country. And the scale of what happened there, well, it's just staggering. Okay, so the details here are just devastating. We're talking at least 169 people confirmed dead. And out of those, 90 were civilians. We're talking about women, children, the elderly. The loss of life was so overwhelming that the victims had to be buried in a mass grave. This wasn't some battlefield clash between soldiers. This was a flat-out massacre of innocent people. So, in the moments and hours right after an attack like this, what do you do? For the survivors, the shock instantly turned into a desperate, frantic search for safety. And here's another number for you: 1,000. That's how many terrified civilians fled for their lives. And where did they run? To the only place they thought might be safe, a nearby United Nations base. You can just imagine the sheer panic on the ground that would cause 1,000 people to drop everything and run. And of course, the UN on the ground responded immediately. You have this quote from Anita Kikigiho, a UN official, basically pleading for the violence to stop, saying that their peacekeepers would do everything they possibly could to protect people. And really, it just hammers home how critical that UN presence is when things fall apart. All right, so this brings us to the really complicated part. Who did this? Who was responsible? As you can imagine, the finger-pointing started almost immediately, and we're left with this fog of conflicting stories. So, on one hand, you've got the government, which is loyal to President Salva Kiir. They came out right away and blamed militias connected to his big rival, Riek Machar. But then Machar's camp immediately fired back, saying, "No way, we don't even have a military presence there." It's this classic he said, she said at the very top of the political food chain. But it gets even murkier. There's another theory floating around from diplomatic sources suggesting this might not have been about national politics at all. It could have been an ethnic revenge attack, maybe for the killing of some local traders. The bottom line here, no one has actually stood up and said, "We did this." And that information vacuum is incredibly dangerous. Okay, so this attack, as horrible as it was, didn't just happen out of the blue. To really understand why it happened, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because what this really is a symptom of a national peace deal that is completely and utterly falling apart. So how did we get here? Well, the road to this renewed violence has been building for a while. You had this very fragile peace deal signed back in 2018. But then, last year, President Kiir removed Machar from his job as vice president and put him under house arrest. Things started to go downhill fast. By December, violence was already spiking in other regions. So you see, the Abiemnom Massacre wasn't the start of the fire. It was more like the explosion that happens after the fire's been burning for a while. And this political collapse, well, its impact goes way beyond the politicians. The entire country is now getting sucked into a massive, deepening humanitarian crisis. I mean, get a load of this number: 280,000. That is the insane number of people who have had to flee their homes because of recent fighting, and that's just in one state. It just goes to show you, this isn't some small, localized conflict anymore. It's creating these huge waves of displaced people all over the country. And the world is absolutely taking notice. I mean, listen to this. Catherine Russell, she's the head of UNICEF. She came right out and called this the largest humanitarian crisis her organization is dealing with, not just in the region, globally. When you hear words like that from the head of UNICEF, you know things are incredibly, incredibly dire. And what you get is this cascading disaster, right? It's a domino effect. Now, even aid workers are being targeted. Can you believe that? Doctors Without Borders had 26 of their own staff go missing after an airstrike, and they had to suspend medical services in a couple of key towns. So the very people who are there to help are now in danger themselves. And all of this has led the UN to issue its most serious warning yet, that South Sudan is on the brink of a full-scale civil war. So that leaves us here with this really urgent and honestly scary question. The peace deal is basically shredded. The violence is getting worse by the day. The humanitarian crisis is just exploding. So the question is, can the world's youngest nation actually pull itself back from the brink? And maybe more importantly, what on earth is it going to take to stop this spiral before it's too late?